Welcome to the RC Aerobatics podcast. I'm your host, Rich Whitlow, and this week we talk to Andrew Jesky, the current champion for pattern nats and also the world team captain. We talk about his history, how he got into flying, and some great stories about bad things that happen in other countries. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Well, hey, Andrew, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, sure. First, congratulations for your Nats win. That's terrific. I know it seems like old hat, but it was just amazing flying, man.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Like I say, everybody that gets to fly at the Nats, I think, is truly winning. And unfortunately, there can only be one person in first place in each class. But it was truly a pleasure to fly with everybody and get to watch everybody fly at the Nats this year.
Absolutely, and hopefully we'll get to talk about that a little bit later on. But to kind of get started, and in case there's somebody out there who doesn't know about you and your background, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and where you grew up and that kind of good stuff?
Oh man, it's funny. It's been a long time now that I think about it. So I started flying when I was 7 years old. When I was 6, my dad and brother got into it. My brother asked for a model airplane for Christmas. So they had gotten him an airplane for Christmas and built it. We go out to the flying field. They flew it. It was an old Carl Goldberg Tiger. I think it was either the Mirage 550, I think is what it was called. The electric one. And built that over the winter, went out to the flying field. They flew it, got hooked, and kind of got into the gas side or glow side. And then one day out at the flying field, Dave George came up to me and was like, hey, do you know your rights and your lefts? And I said, yeah. And so then we just he was like, well, do you want to fly? And I was like, well, yeah, definitely would love to. So I went out and flew for the first time. And actually the way that I learned was I just looked at the radio and he would just tell me left, right, up, down, and flew a 3-channel SIG Senior. And it just kind of progressed from there. We go out to the flying field. It was a family event. My mom would come out. Me and my brother and my dad were out there. And then when I was 10, Bob Kane actually asked my parents if I would go to a pattern contest that they were going to, or that he and his daughter were going to. And I went for the first time and absolutely loved it. I was flying a Tiger II, finished last place in what is now Sportsman. But I mean, just being there with everybody and getting to experience it. And then it kind of just continuously grew into that. Then my dad and brother went, and we got our first pattern plane. My brother actually got his first pattern plane before me. He's 6 years older than me. It was a USA Star built by a guy named Charlie Williams in Michigan. And it's amazing to me, all of the people that you come in contact with and that really kind of help, bring new people into the sport. It's just incredible. Charlie did wonders for me. I met Mark Atwood when I was very young, and he took me under his wing, and Vern Kester, and I mean just the list of so many people that they're there to compete, but they're also taking the time and spending it with somebody new. I mean, you can imagine us being very young and not really knowing what's going on with four strokes, right? That was back when it was the 91 SC and NC, and the 140s were just coming out, and just kind of progressed from there. And I was hooked. What I loved about it was there was a reason to go and fly and go practice, right? Here's a set of maneuvers. Right. Here's your criteria. Go fly it the best you can. And later on down the road, it kind of clicked to me one day. I was talking with Vern, who, coach of mine for so long. He said, there's no such thing as a perfect flight. Well, being young, 16, 17, 18, you always strive for that. Well, I'm going to do my best that I can. But that's the drive even to this day that I go out and I try and fly that perfect flight, because you will never fly a perfect flight. You're going to have flights that are very, very good, but it's never going to be perfect. And I find that side of what we do so incredibly challenging, but incredibly satisfying as well.
Right. Right.
And that
And
was the pattern side of it. And then it kind of progressed, through the years. We did the 3D stuff and the Tucson things, and started a business, kind of designing airplanes. So it's been a great journey. I'm 35 years old now, so coming up on 30 years of doing it. And people ask me, they're like, "Well, do you still enjoy it?" I mean, that's why I go fly, is because I truly enjoy it for myself and just love to do it.
hmm well, absolutely, absolutely. And when you grow up, you were where were you living at that time? Were you in Ohio?
So I
Is
was
that right?
just southern Michigan, so just about
Southern Michigan. Okay.
yeah, about 15 miles inside of the Michigan Ohio border. I actually belong to the Toledo Weak Signals Club, the club that put on the Weak Signals big trade show.
Right.
Their field was in Michigan, and everybody even back then at the club were just amazing folks. Let me practice whenever I needed, and always were there to help. So it was truly incredible. And then at 23, I moved out to Utah, and I kind of got my first career, my first job, true job, and met some
Uh-huh.
great guys out in Utah. Stayed out there for about, we'll call it 10 years, because I kind of bounced back and forth, but I was there for 7 years. Met Darren Pierce, who was an old pattern pilot who had just gotten out kind of as I was getting into it. He had kids, and I kind of got him hooked back into it. He's become one of my best friends, and it's just truly
Oh,
incredible.
awesome.
Like, everybody out there that wants to help.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And being in flying. So what was your first job? What did you do for a living?
So at 23, so I was pretty fortunate to get a job right out of high school with a guy named Rick Letterman, and I traveled around as a subcontractor for Snap-on. But this other job is actually what I have now. I started to work for Textron Systems. Back then it was AI Corporation, and was flying UAVs. So Shadow 200s. It's an Army UAV, and
Hmm
I just fell into the right spot at the right time, had some friends that were doing it. I actually helped with another smaller company back in Michigan. Some guys wanted to do some electric flying, but it was, a couple 100-pound airplane.
Right.
And they knew, people at Hacker knew kind of the folks, and knew that I would help. And it was funny, one day when we finally test flew it, a week after that, there was a check waiting in the mail. And I was like, huh, you can get paid to do this. So I reached out to Chris Mayer, who's in Virginia right now, and he was like, yeah, we're starting up something out in Utah. And I was like, never really heard much of Utah, but went out,
Right.
interviewed, and just kind of really enjoyed the process. It's a government contractor, but everybody I work with, it's probably 95% prior military folks, and I loved the processes and the way that they think as a team. And, now I'm going into program management, just because some of the health stuff that I had with my eye, it's hard to keep an FAA upslip. But,
Right.
I'm absolutely blessed with everything that's come of that.
Well, that's terrific, man. It's a cool thing because I talk to a lot of people now that's really a big industry for RC pilots now.
It really has become, very big. And it's been that way for a very long time. You kind of think of it as it's in its infancy, but the guy that taught me how to fly was Dave Wilson, who was a pattern pilot from the West Coast, who flew with the Kimbros. The site lead was Mike Goebel, who's a pattern pilot from the East Coast. Flew with Vic Green, pattern guy from down south. So I mean, it while it seems new, I mean, they've been flying. They called them RPVs back then since the '80s. So I think
Right.
it's kind of just
Uh-huh.
become more into the light now. But yeah, it's a great industry. It can be a little volatile, so I kind of, that's why I stay with my company. But there's a lot of folks that we know that are involved in it
Right.
now.
Yeah. Well, that's something, and to be able to be in that industry when you have an interest in aviation is pretty cool.
It really is.
So, how young were you when you started helping and getting into design of the RC airplanes?
So I would say I was right around 15 when I started. Um, And at the time, I was flying for Flighton Aircraft, who was a Korean company. And, they had kind of these hybrid 3D IMAC airplanes, which really kind of I enjoyed. BJ
Mm-hmm.
Kraft actually was one of the guys, or BJ, I call him BJ Kraft, but BJ was, he was one of the designers for him. And, we kind of
Mm-hmm.
talked a little bit, and I said, hey, I think I'd like to try something. And he says, oh, well, you guys think you can do something? I said, sure. So the first airplane I ever designed, which was a extra 330S back from Flight Time, was actually done on computer paper, hand drawn airfoils, scaled everything down. And at the time, like, it was a very light airplane, and it worked well for the time. But then,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of did a little bit of testing, and then Ben Fisher from 3D Hobby Shop, I kind of got linked up with him through a mutual friend in Texas, he was in Texas, my friend was in Ohio, and that's where we
Mm-hmm.
first came out with the first AJ Slick. And that was 2007 when we released the first 51 inch, and that kind of ran through the sizes. But back then I started, I learned AutoCAD and could kind of figure out where, all the things that I needed to be actually make it legit when I submit a design.
Right. Oh, very cool. Very cool. And at, when did you decide you were going to start producing your own stuff and designing your own stuff?
It was kind of a tough decision. With my family being so heavily involved in the modeling world, we kind of sat down one day and said, maybe this is something we can look at. We kind of had the inroads to some factories and talked to some folks. And one day I kind of had a really good business mentor, Larry Markey, and he said, like you never know if you don't try. So
Right.
he was gracious enough to say, let's figure out what we need to do, what it's going to take, and it just kind of took off from there. And it's funny because the first airplane that I designed for the company was the 73-inch Slick that we still sell today, and is probably, or sorry, the 73-inch Laser, which is still probably one of the
Uh-huh.
most popular airplanes to this day. And what's kind of nice is, especially in the aerobatic world, is you can kind of create the design and then scale it up, scale it down, and it kind of changes with the
Right.
market. When I knew DA was coming out with their 70 twin, I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna make an airplane, a little bit bigger than what a 50cc was, and really kind of
Uh-huh.
gear it towards that. So it's really cool being on the inside when it comes to design, but sometimes you do want to smash your head against a door, dealing with the factories as well.
Yeah, I can only imagine, especially now with all
It
the
Yeah, the trials and tribulations of what COVID has, I guess, exposed, or just the changes in manufacturing. Now it's very hard to get prototypes quick, and the dollar is
mhm.
now much thinner, so you kind of have to be very cognizant of that. But we still do it because in the end, I have a full time job. My parents are both retired. They run the day to day operations, and my brother, who's also involved, has a full time job. We really do it for the consumer to just have a good flying airplane that they really enjoy. So that our reward, our payment is basically getting those emails that say, "Hey, I just flew my first AG airplane and absolutely loved it." And that's the part that we really enjoy. And everything we just roll right back into the company investment wise, because
Mhm.
that's because, like I mentioned before, when we first started, we had so many people willing to help us out, that this is kind of how, one of the ways that I try and pay it back to the modeling world is, create good airplanes. And I would say, back in 2007 when we first started, airplane designs they aren't where they're at today. You really can't go wrong with an airplane now.
Right.
So, it's really cool to see the industry grow to what it is in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's I have so many friends and even myself for our traveling plane or even our early planes, that 105 laser for IMAC was just kind of a staple. It flies so well, and it handles the the rough flights as well. And it's easy
Yeah,
to repair.
That's and that was one of the things. We come out. I wanted to come out with an airplane that you didn't have to have a because back then it was you had to have a 40%er with a 200 on it to fly well, and that
Hmm.
was one of the big things with that. Stretch the tail and kind of changed a few things around, but yeah, just a really fun design, and getting to hear people that flew it in IMAC and did really well with it in IMAC is it's just great to hear those comments from the folks.
Yeah, yeah. I got to tell you, it was amazing this year, and I think it's a telling thing to watch Sasha, win the Invitational with the 100cc plane. That was incredible, and I think it tells us a lot that you're kind of at the point where it matters what the pilot is
Yeah, yeah, it's
more
the
than the
it's the
plane.
practice regimen and the plane for sure. Yeah, that's actually it was funny because I felt horrible for Sasha because he said he couldn't get his airplane, so I just reached out to him and said, "Hey man, like I got my slick here. You're more than welcome to it. I can get it to Chris Barton and he can get it there." And he was super thankful for that. And, I didn't think much because I just trying to help a competitor. I've been fortunate enough to
Right.
travel overseas and couldn't imagine, basically having the rug pulled out from under you like that. And yeah, to
Hmm.
have him do his, to have him go win the contest was incredible.
Yeah, I tell you what, and the network of people who help these competitors. I mean, Chris Barton and you, and and the guys on the West Coast. Just it's just amazing. If somebody gets into a jam, then somebody's going to step up, and that's really incredible in this
It
hobby.
it really is. And what's funny is, like I say, we've been very fortunate to travel, and you see that everywhere, right? I remember this one time, me and Mark Atwood, we were at a World Championships, and we were trying to talk to the Japanese. Everybody always drills over their airplanes, and you're looking, and I don't speak Japanese. They don't speak very good English. But what was amazing to me is we still could talk model airplanes. Like you could point and kind of gesture and still hold a very good conversation. And that's one of the coolest things that I see with airplanes is you can go anywhere in the world and you have a common interest. You might not speak the same language, but you have a common vested interest in what you're doing, and you can hold a very good conversation in that. And everybody's always willing to help. Like you say, we go to South Africa, and we got guys. Here's a generator for you to use. Here's chargers. Everybody's always so willing to help. It's just incredible.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, with your planes now, you flew your biplane, correct, at Nats?
Yep, that I did. Yeah. So
Okay, is that what you plan on taking for the Worlds?
yeah, that is the game plan. There's a lot that kind of goes in with the world stuff. So they're actually getting ready to have a contest at the World Championship site in New Casino, Australia. So we're really watching the weather. You kind of think
Mm-hmm.
we know what Muncie's going to be like in July, right? We kind of, July, August, we know
Right.
it's going to be hot. It's probably going to be windy. Well, when you go to these worlds, you kind of have to look to see what those conditions are going to be like there. Is it going to be super windy like in Argentina? Cold? What's the elevation? So you have to kind of put those into your determining factors. But right now, the Proteus Pipe is the plan um, to go for the next Worlds. We're going to be doing a little bit of testing on power plants and kind of see if there's something where we can pick up, a little advantage here and there because everybody flies so well at the World Championships. You're looking for that, that half a point wherever you can get it. That's a big thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The kind of going back to qualifying with that with the Nats. John DeRinger did such a great job getting all that stuff together. You have any comments, or how did you like the way things ran and the after hours activities? I know everybody likes to practice and has their own routines, but what did you feel about the Nats and all that?
John, fortunately, I've gotten to know John fairly well over the last couple of years, and he did an incredible job at the Nats. He really puts in the time and effort, and I kind of joke with him because I feel bad. He like, man, you really should fly at these, but you've done such a good job that I really want you just to keep running them. But his attention to detail with every little thing, it was perfect in every regard, right? You had your QR code if you needed to know where you're at. He had individual printed packets to tell you, hey, this is when you need to judge, this is when you're going to fly. The after hours section, I think, was awesome. I think that really kind of culminates everything that we do. It allows people, if they practice by themselves or if they're not really sure on setup, Brian had his seminar that you could learn a ton of valuable information on. John put on a flight coach one. We're kind of shifting over to some of the new technology. And then you got, people like myself, I'm going to go out and practice because that's my normal thing that I do for the contest. I really want to just try and go practice and do the best that I can. But to have those options, that's one of the things that I've discussed with some of the local contests in District 4 with the guys is I feel like a lot of times we have the contest, you have your 4 rounds, everybody's super stressed, and then everybody leaves, right? They're going to go try and find dinner and then make it to the next day. But what they've tried to do here recently is like have, maybe cook out at the flying field rather than go to a restaurant, because that way it allows everybody to kind of get together, still at the field, maybe bring a fun airplane to fly and kind of wind down and maybe get to know people a little more, or maybe just, share ideas and things that you're practicing on, or just, have the ability to help each other coach. Maybe there's a young person there or someone that's just getting into it and they really want to know, what they need to focus on. Well, it's hard to do that at, the day or the morning of the contest. Everybody's trying to get their last flight in, kind of settle the nerves. But at the end of the day, you can really kind of sit down and say, hey, this is kind of what I was seeing today. This is what I would try. And you don't feel as rushed. And I really, really like that kind of atmosphere because that's what we did back in, 97, 98. In Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, they had like these pattern bats that people would actually build during the contest. And then at the end of the day, they would go and have combat with them. And it was so much fun. And you got to, one of the things that I loved is, like Mark Atwood, when I first met him, that was probably 97, 98, he was doing incredible in Masters. Jeff Combs was doing really good in FAI. And I was just a young kid, but getting to hang out with these guys and just really, mingle and kind of pick their brain it was just something really cool because, you go to dinner, you got 10, 15 guys, you kind of can't have a good conversation except with the person right next to you. And I really loved kind of that, just getting to pick their brain, but doing it in a very, normal setting, just talking about airplanes. Back then Jeff was doing the TOC. So one of the contests, he brought his big 44% extra. And, I was in awe of that and kind of getting to talk about what the TOC was. And Von Linsway, he was there. Mike Klein was there. So it was a lot of fun. And I'm really hoping that we're kind of gearing back up towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I certainly enjoyed the after hour sessions. I needed the trim setup. And I fly with Brian. And I still learned a lot from his seminar,
Well, and it's one of those things that if we get in such a rush to we got to get 6 flights or you got to get 7 flights, but if your airplane's not trimmed, you're not really doing yourself any favors rather than take that little bit extra time, really trim your airplane and think about it and then go practice. It really kind of, and with Brian, his experience, he's done it for so long. So you can ask him a question and he'd probably be like, well, back in, 97, I was flying this airplane and I had the same thing. And he could tell you exactly what he did to fix it. And, now you've just saved yourself, however many flights, however many days for sure.
Yeah. It's amazing hearing some of the stories. I know there's a story with him and Brandon Landry when Brandon first got into the contest, and he was flying some old plane. I think it might have been one of Brian's early planes, a Patriot or something, and he flew it and won the contest, and he asked Brian if he would fly it and help him give him some pointers. And Brian flew it and said, "How are you flying this plane? It's set up so bad."
Yep, that's it.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so I got so many questions we're not going to get to. When it gets closer to Worlds, I'll talk a little bit about the details of Worlds later on in another time. But just for now, now that you have the world team selected, what goes on between now and the heavy practice when you're getting close next summer to Worlds?
There's a lot of logistical things that start to take place. Over the last week or so, I've been texting Jason and Pete and John. He's been working on logos, right, for the team. We got to come up with a logo that everybody likes. And it's the things that you don't think about, right? How does it look on a shirt? What is it going to look like as a graphic? So we're working towards those. Fortunately, I guess if you want to look at it this way, is we're all kind of southeast for our location. So we're probably all going to end up meeting in Atlanta and flying over to Australia from there. But you got to start figuring out boxes because you, like myself, I live in Huntsville, Alabama. Like I can't put the boxes on one of the airplanes because they're just flying, either 200 series RJs. Sometimes they'll fly 717 and the crates that we take can't fit on those. So I have to go to the hub in Atlanta and then that way, cause they're going to go right on the airplane with us. Jason, whether he'll do the same from Orlando, fly to Orlando up to Atlanta or drive up to Atlanta. You start to figure those things out. We're looking at practice sites. That's a big thing. Like we need to get a practice site located. That way this time there's only gonna be 3 of us going on the team, so it's maybe we can share a practice site. But like when we went in Italy, there was 5 of us there. So we're trying to mix all that, and then once you figure out a practice site, then you got to figure out the hotel location or an Airbnb. There's a lot of logistical things that go in, and that was when Mark did an amazing job as a team manager, and Albert before that. Those are the guys that I was on the team with. And Mark's going to go as my caller, so he's going to help out John. And John, as you can tell by the Nats, really runs everything to ground. So we're really just trying to kind of keep the ball rolling, keep the momentum going.
Absolutely.
I'm not practicing as much. I'm still flying the pattern planes, but now that I have Tucson coming up, I've kind of train my brain back to IMAX. So, and then once that's over, but in the interim, right, I'm still working on airplanes, getting the new airplanes coming over here, figuring out power plants. Because what happens that I find is you think, oh, I got a year. Well, that year turns into 9 months, and then 9 months turns into 6 months, and 6 months turns into 3 months, and then it's there. And you at the 6 month mark, I really want to have my airplane sorted out. I want to have my power plant sorted out. I want to just be able to focus on practicing and really getting, the routines and hopefully flying some unknowns with, the hope to make the finals at the contest, because that's the hardest part is, you kind
the boxing is important. And I know Jason's had some issues over the years with boxes and I guess inspections of boxes. So you guys travel over there on the same planes with your boxes. You don't ship and meet the planes there. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we did do that one time in Argentina, and it actually ended up just becoming a logistical nightmare because then they have to clear customs. You're not with them. So yeah. So what we'll do is we'll probably end up going to Atlanta, driving to Atlanta, and then checking our airplanes directly on the airplane with us. And again, like Delta, they're 115 linear is the size the box can be, and it can't be any longer than 80. So normally you make it, 79 by 20 tall by 15 wide. It puts you right at 114 inch linear. And you got to get there early. You got to open up the boxes so they can see it. It's got to be under 55 pounds. There's a lot of logistical things that go into just getting your airplane there and hoping that they don't get crushed. That was one of the things that I was texting Pete and Jason about is, one of the fortunate things in the, manufacturing world in China is we have that corrugated honeycomb cardboard that's roughly 3/4 of an inch wide. And I asked the guys, would you like me to get these made for all of us? Because then it'd be a lot lighter, because you think of, if you've ever gotten like an oxeye box, they're not going to damage the airplane, but I think they weigh, 75 or 80 pounds.
Right.
And by the time you take 2 airplanes and your luggage, you could be looking at $500 charge per
Right.
airplane just for that. So these honeycomb cardboard boxes keep it under 55 pounds. And last time when we went to Italy, I think it was only $100 an airplane is what it cost me, because I had Kevin check. Kevin checked one, I checked one. So it's the little things that you don't think about, but you have to do because, again, right? It's a year away right
Right.
now, but if you don't start thinking of it in 3-month blocks, you tend to lose. You'll end up losing all that time and
Yeah.
not being
Yeah.
prepared.
But that's absolutely true. Well, good deal. I just got two more questions we'll go through so I won't keep all your time, and
Yeah.
then maybe in the spring we'll talk a little bit about the details of the worlds and how that stuff's going. The first one is your competitions that you were planning on attending this year. Now you're on your way up to Michigan. So what's your schedule like for the end of the year?
The biggest thing that I have going is
Mm-hmm.
going to be the Tucson Shootout in the middle of October. So that'll be flying IMAX style airplanes. I'm trying to possibly host a pattern primer in Huntsville. I haven't worked out the logistics 100%, but I'd really like to get everybody to Huntsville, and rather than just have a 6-round contest, I'd really like to have everybody there for
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a test and tune session. Kind of go over everybody's airplane, and because like we talked about before, I think everybody kind of gets lost in the 6 rounds. You got to go to the contest and you go home. As where this would be more of like a let's see what everybody's having issues with. If it's the loop with the 4-point over the top in Masters, let's focus on that
Mm-hmm.
for a few flights to get somebody there. I really want to help grow the pattern and keep people involved. So I'm going to look to do that in the fall time here. Tucson Shootout in October, and then I'm planning to go to Columbia right after Halloween. They have their big Pan Am contest down there. I've had a great
Uh-huh.
time with Marcelo Velez and Sergio down there, and I kind of want to go support those guys and just get to never. I talk to these guys basically almost on a daily, and have never been there, so would love
Oh,
to go
that's
check out
awesome. Yeah,
Columbia
I
and see how
was
that
talking
is.
with Brian and I've been talking with them, and I got invited to go down and judge, and my schedule didn't work out this year, but man, that is that is one of the things I would like to go do. I hope you guys have a great time down there.
Yeah. I think it would be a great time just to go down there and go fly at a contest, of course, but get to experience the culture and experience kind of what their contests are, because there's always little things that change. And I think if one of the things I was talking to Mark about is he said there was, I think, like 13-foot sugarcane plants right in front of where you're flying, so your baseline changes a little bit, but something like that would just be kind of fun to go and
Right,
experience
right.
and
Oh, that's
see
terrific.
everybody for sure.
Well, good deal. The other thing was actually a suggestion of yours. I know you had a little issue at Nats, and only 3 of your ailerons were working there for a flight. So I'd like you to tell us a little bit about that, and then I'd like you to do a little segment. Well, I think your suggested title was "Stupid Things I've Done in Other Countries."
Yeah. So yeah, like it kind of got around the nets real fast. It was the semifinals day, and I think we kind of had overcast clouds. It was raining a little bit and kind of off and on spitting, and putting. I always put both airplanes together. I had put the backup together and then went to the primary, and just was talking to some folks, and people started showing up, and people were kind of coming around, and just put my airplane together. And on this particular airplane, I'm running a non-S bus setup, so I have a Futaba connector for one aileron, and then I have a power box connector for the other one, so I know which
Mm-hmm.
aileron goes to which port. And in the process, I plugged the power box one and upside down. We get out to the flight line, everything's good. I do a surface check because I learned in the UAV world, like, you always a surface check. Well, it was the bottom right hand aileron that wasn't working. And the way that I took off from left to right was outside, so I couldn't see that. And I took off, and I did in F, I'm trying to save as much time, so I did kind of a quick turn. And I'm like, that feels a little sluggish. But I wasn't exactly sure, so I went up and did the half reverse Cuban 8, and I told AC, I was like, oh, man, I only have 3 ailerons working. He's like, huh? I go, yeah, only 3 of them are working. So I could tell that it was slower. And I'm like, well, we're just going to have to do this, right? Like, I can't land. I'm going to have to do this. So, fortunately, with him behind me, we just kind of talked. We're like, okay, like, it's going to be a little slower, so let's work on a few things. So the winner, I really noticed it was the snap going up in the second maneuver in F. It was just a little bit slower, so I waited a little bit longer, and the 8-point come out of that, I just had to hit, a little harder. So everything, I think, ended up looking a little bit softer. But the one that scared me the most was actually going into the spins, because we have those 2 1/4 reversed, and I was worried as I slowed the airplane down, the aileron would either lift up or droop down and not go back to center.
Oh, yeah.
So did the 2 1/4 and everything worked good. And I came out and I'm like, oh wow, it's still in trim, so we're good. So we kind of got through the whole thing, and I was like, wow, we actually just made that work. And I was super fortunate that AC was behind me, and kind of talked me off the ledge, and we just kind of laughed about it. But Jay got me that round, but like I said, I think I flew like a 998 to his 1,000, and I was like, hey, I can take that. I'm A-okay with that. But it's it's one of those things, right? You put the airplane together so much, and you get in your habits and your routines, and it wasn't anybody's fault that it happened. People talking, I wasn't focused on what I was doing. Kind of a lessons learned from that. Like, if I go forward with that, I'm going to end up running those 6-pin connectors that you can only plug it in one way. Mark was showing me that's what they did to Pete's airplane, and it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, like we had talked about, it got around the Nats fast. So, yeah, like I say, we've definitely done some dumb things in foreign countries from the get-go. I'll start off 2007, Argentina. It was my first World Championships. I was flying a Comp Arc Integral with a Hacker C50. And back then, we greased the gearbox every 50 flights. So precautionary measure, first time, the contest. So what I do is I'm going to pull everything apart, re-grease the gearbox, put it back in for the first contest flight. So I'm already super nervous because it's my first flight at a World Championships. Go to plug everything in, go to run the motor up, the motor's running backwards. So I'm already a stressed out mess. So thankfully, Jay's behind me. He's like, don't worry about it. We pulled the canopy off, switched the 2 bullets, go fly, and everything worked out well. But you can only imagine, my anxiety level there was just through the roof. Same year, we're on this, we're at an airport, and this is really my first true time traveling overseas. I dropped my passport, didn't know where I dropped it. Thankfully, one of the really nice locals picked it up and gave it back to me. And I can still to this day the look on my mom's face when the person came up to me and handed me my passport was a look I will never forget. Like, I should kill you right now, but I can't.
Holy cow.
So, oh yeah, there was that one. Let's see, in 2009 when we went to Portugal, I had just come back from the Nationals. I was flying a Krill model Spark, and get to the contest. Me and Vern had traveled through the night, get to our hotel. I should probably go to sleep, but it's the middle of the day. So I'm like, oh no, I'm going to put my airplane together. I'm going to, we're going to go practice because we got the contest site. We're going to practice. Well, in the midst of doing all this, I tighten the elevators down because they're adjustable, and it had a carbon pin, and I crushed that carbon pin almost halfway through because I'm keep tightening. It's not really tightened up. And, I take off and the airplane's out of trim, but I'm not really sure what's going on. So Vern's just like, just fly it. So we never truly fixed that issue. But, a lessons learned from there is, we take incidence meters now, and we know exactly where the airplane's at, where it needs to be. Fortunately for me in Muncie, 2011 was fairly good because, it was July. It was Muncie. We kind of knew where where everything was. We all had our own cars. Let's see, 2013 was South Africa. The biggest lesson that I learned there was to try and be the first one to wake up, because that's when we had Joseph there as the junior. So Jay, Joseph, Brett, Brian, Dave, Vern, myself, and the hot water there, because it was wintertime in South Africa. Mark was always the first one up to get the warm showers, and they had the floor at this place that we stayed was like the tile floor, and the rooms didn't have any heaters in them. We ended up going out and buying heaters, but it was so cold that we would lay clothes down, so right when you stepped out of your bed in the morning, you weren't absolutely freezing. Like everywhere. 2015, we what did we do in 2015? Luckily, I don't think I had a ton of bad stuff. That was the year that Don had put regular fuel in the rental car that takes diesel, so we had to get that. 2013, Jay left the transmitter in one of the rentals at the airport. So the day that we get there, again, that's a 16-hour flight from Atlanta, and we get in and we get our rental situated, and they're just not going to work, right? The seats don't come out like they said they were going to, so the airplanes won't fit. So we kind of do some shuffling and get some right vehicles, and we get back to the hotel that we're staying at, and Jay's like, oh no. We're like, what? He's like, I left my radio in the first rental. So we haul butt back, and it's an hour drive. We're going as fast as we can to get there, so you don't have to do all the editing.
Oh no, we're good. We're good. As a matter of fact, now you got one more story to tell. The next time you're on a interview or podcast, and you talk about that time when you're trying to podcast in Kentucky
it's, like I say, I'm in between Louisville and Bowling Green, Kentucky right now, so they must not have too many cell towers out here.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Other than AJ Aircraft, because we're all going to assume that you would consider that a sponsor. Who else do you have sponsorship wise?
I'm again super fortunate to have a lot of companies kind of help me out. CA Models, they're the ones making the Proteus bike. Futaba RC, they're the ones that are radio guidance servos. Thunder Power RC for all the batteries that I need. Adderun, that's the drives that I'm running right now, or they're helping me with those drives. Falcon, it's probably one of the biggest ones. I honestly can't say much without mentioning them. We flew the first Falcon prop in 2010 at the Nats there, and ever since I've not had anything else other than Falcons on my airplanes. And it's not even the people that sponsor me, but just having the companies that are readily available to order stuff. Mike at F3 Unlimited, Al at Central Hobbies.
Right.
Being able to reach out Brian with all of his trimming setups that we have. All of these companies really make it possible for us to do what we do, and that's a lot of people may have heard, the further along that I get, I tend to buy a lot of things and test, because I kind of want to see if there's any advantage to anything, and rather than rather than really like, oh, I'm gonna ask for this for free, and if I don't use it then they're gonna get mad, I just tend to like purchase the stuff, and if I like it then I say, hey, I'm gonna use it in the contest, maybe there's something that we can do to work together. But just having the companies out there that are open and continuously producing airplanes. I mean, people probably don't realize the headache that Brian goes through, getting airplanes in from Extreme, and trying to juggle that, and seeing models down in Argentina and Yang over in China, right? There's so many of these companies that are doing it, and really they're doing it to profit, but without them we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So anybody that's out there, promoting F3A, in my opinion, is, a stand-up company, and super, super happy to, if I can buy something from them and support it, like I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So if somebody wants to find out more information about you, AJ Aircraft, what are the websites, social medias, and how can they contact you?
So they can contact me through anything. AJ Aircraft, we have our contact through there. They can drop me an email. It's just andrewjesky@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook. I don't post a lot. Just kind of one of those things. I think it's just Andrew Jesky on Facebook. I got Instagram, same deal, it's Andrew Jesky. But I mean, there's so many people that are out there that, they have my number, they have my email. Like anybody, if somebody needs help with anything or wants to get a hold of me, we can always find a way to communicate, contact, and help out with whatever I can.
Terrific. Well, I appreciate all your generosity, and I appreciate your time, man. It's you being in the hobby and aerobatics in general. We didn't even get to talk about freestyle and all the other stuff that's out there, but one day we'll get back together and do that. But I really appreciate your time and everything you've done, and looking forward to seeing you fly again soon.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. This is another avenue that I think is incredible for building the sport and, building model airplanes, getting the word out on, podcasts, having people be able to listen to it in their car. And so I really appreciate you doing that and having me on it.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, safe travels, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for listening to the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. A very special thanks to my good friend John Gros, who wrote the song Deep in the Mud that is used as the show bumper music. Check him out on his website, www.johnpapagros.com. A link is in the show notes. See you at the next episode.